People always ask me like, Xander, have you been burnt out? Or Xander, have you been overwhelmed? I don't really identify with that. And I think a lot of people, when they burn out, what happens is they have this like strong visceral reaction of like, oh my God, that was so wrong. I got to go 10 steps back here to get back to safety sort of thing. And it's like, not necessarily.
Welcome to Coach's Corner with Zander and Jay, where we share real stories, screw-ups, and strategies that help coaches build businesses they love without the fluff. Think of it as hanging out with two friends who've made the mistakes, learned the lessons, and aren't afraid to laugh about it. Let's dive in. So I want to dig in today. We hear a lot of coaches who start their business because they want more freedom, right? Freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom to do the work they love. And on the other hand, we see people talking about grinding and working all the time, staying up late, answering DMs at all hours of the day and night. And we see some of the behind the scenes of the stuff that people do and hear their real stories. Sometimes that does not feel like freedom. So I wanted to dig into like work-life balance, right? What does work-life balance mean to you? How would you define it? And like, do you feel like you have it?
Good question. I mean, me personally, I've never been a fan of the term work-life balance, to be honest. I think the term work-life balance, in my opinion, applies more to like the 9-to-5 world where you're doing something at work that you're not frankly, you don't want to be doing, right? So it's this idea of like, I have to work at something that I don't want to do in order to make the money so that I can live the rest of my life. For me and for a lot of our clients, obviously in the coaching space, why you get into the coaching space is I don't really believe in work-life balance. I don't call work and play. It's all just life. And I think really what you should strive for is you should strive for a life where like, you're just living the life that you want because it's aligned with who you are and what you want to do, right? And I think trying to, when you do things that you don't want to do, you're always trying to work less and play more. But if you actually just doing things that you actually want to do, work and life is kind of a much more blurred line, in my opinion. So if you're asking me like, do I have it? I would say 100% yes.
Great answer. The topic of this is work-life balance. I ask you,
so should I retract that statement? And
you're like, you're like, I reject it. Work-life balance doesn't exist. Great. We'll end the podcast.
How would you define work-life balance?
I totally relate to what you were saying.
I've never been so shut down before after I was so proud of an answer. It just took me out at the knees.
It's funny though. Sometimes I ask you those questions and you're like, yeah, I reject that. I don't think that is a word that people should use. So, it's funny. I think when I think about balance, it's like you hear this word work-life balance and you're thinking like within a week or within a day or within even like a month. And I think it's like more like life balance.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
As I've done different things over my life, it's like there's periods of time where you are solely focused on one thing.
Yeah.
And then there's periods of time where there's like dozens of things that are going on in your life.
Yeah.
And, it's like, okay, well, maybe you're starting a business and you're 100% focused on getting that thing up and running, like, whatever. Or, just a different example, like you have a kid and you're focused on keeping that kid alive.
You're probably going to need to focus on keeping that kid alive over the other things. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like you don't sleep and you're, you answering every cry.
Your health routines aren't quite there. And yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, if you beat yourself up in those first 2 or 3 months about, not getting to the gym or not, sending someone a birthday card or whatever, it's like you're sort of missing it. I think it's a moving target. But one thing, but what it comes down to is I think there's balance over time. Like there's a sort of work-life balance or just life balance over time, like you said. And then there's also, are you focused on the thing that's in front of you right now in the moment?
Yeah.
Right.
So it sounds like it's a combination of both. And I think to that point too, it's like I have a buddy of mine, Chris, who always says like, there's no such thing as work-life balance. You're always going to go through seasons, very similar to what you're talking about. Like you're going to go through falls and winters and springs and summers and things like that. And understanding the season that you're in kind of dictates what quote unquote balance means to you. But one of my favorite things he said there's seasons within seasons. So like to your point, it's like there is balance within the life as a whole. And then there's, balance within this year, and then there's balance within this month, and then there's balance within this week. So I think there's literally like stages throughout that entire. So, you might be at a stage in your whole life arc, like you mentioned, where it's like, yeah, for the next decade, you might need to be more focused on building the business that you've always dreamed of and having the impact that you've always dreamed of. And that might, swing you a little bit out of balance overall over the decade. Now, in the first year of that, the swing out of balance is probably going to be significantly more, right? And then as it goes on, the swing out of balance might be less. But in that first year, it's like the first year of this initial phase of like launching your business is going to be very out of balance. And you take it, and it's like, even by the month, it's like you might be, the first month you might be working. There's people when they start their businesses, they work 7 days a week, every day for the first month or two. And then they realize, oh, that doesn't work. I need to come back a little bit. Maybe I need to take Sundays off and, that sort of stuff. But it's like it all there's like balances there's seasons within the seasons almost too.
It's interesting. I think part of why, and I was teasing you about your answer earlier, I think part of why I also kind of reject this idea is like, it's almost like an idea that somebody else places on you. Is like, oh, you work all the time. Like you should be doing something else. Or, you never work. You should be, going out and getting something. And it's like, if you're happy with the way that your life is laid out, then you can reject their sort of assessments of it.
Yeah, their placement, their identification of what you're doing.
I think where I hear it a lot is, I hear it from coaches that it's like one of those terms that they sort of use as like either an excuse or like a mask.
Well, it's really heavy idea in the personal development space is like building a well-balanced life, right? And one of the things that I always tell our clients is it's funny because I'll do this on a group call with 20 or 30 or 50 people on it, right? And I'll say, who has their life, like who has everything they want in life? Like your life is exactly where you want it to be. And nobody's hands go up except for mine. Mine goes up. And everybody looks at me like, you a-hole, right? So I was like, oh, really? Like nobody else has like their ideal life, just me? That's weird, right? And then I explained to him, I was like, well, look, balance is for stasis or equilibrium, right? It's like balance is what you want if you are in the space you want to be in. But if you do not have the impact you want to have, or you do not have the freedom you want to have, like you mentioned, or you do not have the alignment that you want to have, you're going to have to swing out of balance to change. Change requires getting off balance. It requires movement. It requires breaking free from the inertia of balance, right? So like, it's interesting, even just like the more that I'm talking about this, I think to your point, like, the idea of balance is taught a lot in the personal development space, but I think it's actually even more heavily hit on in the corporate world to keep you in stasis, to keep you where you're at. You have corporations that are always like, well, yeah, you're going to want to work here because it's a great work-life balance, right? Like it's almost like this trap to get somebody in and be like, haha, you get great work-life balance. Now I got you. You're going to get stuck here for the next 20 years. Next thing you know, you're going to turn around and be like, what the shit did I just do in the last 2 decades of my life?
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know. I already said my part. I disagree with the statement of work-life balance. I don't think it's a thing, and I don't think it should be a thing.
No, that's right. I'm much of more of a fan of like obsession.
Yeah. I've never noticed, Jay.
Yeah. And it's like, there's this idea of like hustle, to get things done. So maybe a better way to kind of ask this question is like, is there like a healthy hustle and like a burnout hustle? And like, how would you tell the difference?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And the answer is absolutely yes. A healthy hustle versus a burnout hustle. I do think there is. And how can you tell the difference between the two? You know, in my opinion, I'm a big believer in how do you find the line? Right. You know, and anybody's ever like, well, how do you find the line? Like, what is the line between healthy hustle and burnout hustle? Well, how do you find the line? Well, at some point you accidentally crossed it. Like you stepped over and you're like, oh shit, that was wrong. Right. And you bring yourself back. I think there's absolutely a difference between healthy hustle and burnout hustle. And I think it just takes a conscious awareness to understand what's what. I couldn't tell you that I have never been in burnout hustle because I can promise you that I have been. Right. But to your point, I think I guess I also kind of disagree with the term burnout a little bit too.
Of course.
Because to your point, we've talked about this before, but to your point, you know, people always ask me like, Zander, have you been burnt out? Or Zander, have you been overwhelmed? Or like things like this. And my answer is always like, yeah, have I felt like I'm burning out? Of course. Have I felt like I'm overwhelmed? Of course. Right. But I don't really identify with that. And I think a lot of people, when they burn out, what happens is they have this like strong visceral reaction of like, oh my God, that was so wrong. I got to go 10 steps back here to get back to safety sort of thing. And it's like, not necessarily, right? Number one, to your point, like, I do believe that there are seasons in life. And I do believe there are seasons where you may need to lean a little bit past healthy hustle into a little bit of like, this is not sustainable. Doesn't mean you're going to stay there forever until you just like crash and burn and face plant in the concrete, right? But it's like, you may need to lean into that a little bit and then kind of pull yourself back a little bit. But I think what happens for most people is they can't recognize that they are in burnout hustle, right? And so what they do is like, once they do recognize it, they go all the way back into lazy POS. I'm not going to do anything for the next 3 years sort of thing. I actually see this all the time in people from the military, right? So people in the military have so much structure and so much drive and so much purpose behind what they're doing that when they get out, oftentimes they go the exact opposite direction. Some people maintain it, right? And then some people reject it with every fiber of their being because they've been too structured and too like hustle and grind and work for too long. And they didn't recognize how against their like neurology that was. So I think it's just being aware and then not just swinging to the other side immediately. It's like finding a healthy medium.
Yeah. So much of this stuff really comes down to awareness.
Yeah.
Right. And like kind of tuning into, you know, what you've chosen and why you've chosen it. And, you know,
yeah,
like when you talk about hustle, like I mean, that's like when you're doing a workout, for example, it's like you use this example all the time. It's like you have to exceed your capacity in order to grow.
The goal is like for progressive overload, your goal is to literally do more than what is possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you have to do more for you to grow.
You know, when you're powerlifting, for example, it's like, and you know, I'm not going to go into all the details of powerlifting, but I'll tell you, if you've never failed a lift, then you probably haven't found your potential.
Your true max.
In order for you to find your true max, you have to exceed your capacity.
And specifically like in the business space too, I find a lot of entrepreneurs that maybe get into the coaching world because they've gotten burnt out in corporate like I did, right? But I think most people then have this visceral reaction of like, oh my God, I was so burnt out in that they create this programming in their brain. I never want to hit that state again. And what they do is they overbuild this buffer between like where they're willing to work their capacity to and where actual burnt out is. Right. I like there's so many people that we work with when they come to us and they're not doing it on purpose, but they like will not work more than like 20 or 30 hours a week. Yeah. They will not. They refuse to for fear of burning out. But the reality, the other part of it is like, it's like, number one, well, you worked 40 or 50 hours a week in a corporate job for 20 years before you burnt out. So you can work 40 hours a week in your coaching business. Like you can do that. You're not going to burn out. The second part of it is, when you're doing it in something that, like, this goes back to my original answer that you so kindly rejected. If you're doing it in something that you're actually aligned with, it is significantly more difficult to actually burn out. Like I could burn out working 35 or 40 hours a week at Cisco, But I could realistically, if I wanted to, probably work 70 or 80 hours a week in the coaching business and never burn out, because it's so aligned with who I am and what I do and what I want. It doesn't feel like work most of the time. And I'm not saying it doesn't take effort and it doesn't take energy. It takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of energy, but it lights you up rather than draining you. And I think that's the difference. So it's like, there's people kind of create this program of like, oh, I need to make sure that I'm going to have work-life balance. Well, number one, if your life is not where you want it to be, you're going to have to swing out of balance. Number two, if you got burnt out in a 9 to 5, like you've probably created this massive extra buffer of like making sure that you're staying safe, right? And number three, it's so much harder to burn out if you're doing something that you actually want to do.
Yeah. Oh, man. Have you ever seen the movie Whiplash?
No. What is it?
Definitely going to add this one to your list. I think you're going to like it. So I think it won an Oscar. Basically, it's about a drummer, and he really wants to be one of the best drummers in the world, right? Yeah. So already you're in. He finds that.
Love it. Did you know that I used to play drums as a kid?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I used to drum as a kid.
This is awesome. So he has an instructor who is basically one of the best instructors in the world. But he is an absolute like monster, right? Yeah. He pushes people so hard. But this kid wants it so bad that he's willing to do whatever it takes, right? Yeah. And he gets to the point where he's practicing so much that his hands start bleeding. And it's an interesting one because I won't spoil the movie, but at the end, you're kind of left with this question of like, was that the right approach?
Yeah.
You know, it's like you're kind of left with that, and that's what makes the movie so compelling. And I think just from my perspective, I love seeing those kind of stories where you go so far into one direction that it's like everyone around sees it as unreasonable.
Crazy, unreasonable. Yeah.
Yeah. Or the Kobe Bryants or whatever. It's like, I'm going to practice 3 hours a day, 3 times, or 3 hours, 3 times a day. Right. Yeah. It's like, it's unreasonable because what it really kind of signals is I want that thing so bad that I'm willing to do stuff that most people wouldn't even consider.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think that's important for all of us to understand, like where we want to be on that journey as entrepreneurs. One of the books that I was reading recently is, I think we were talking about this the other day on a call, Originals by Adam Grant. And he talks about what it actually takes to become a true change agent in the world. Yeah. Right. And the examples that he used of anybody that like truly was like a game changer in any space, a true creative, a true original. Right. And what he pointed out was the most important aspect to what allowed them to get there was they were just prolific. Mm-hmm. Like they did it more. They were actually, they weren't, Steve Jobs or the Beatles or Mozart weren't more creative than your standard human. They just produced such a high volume of work that it was hard not to come out with a masterpiece. Yeah. So it was like the Beatles were like, I think it was like, I can't remember if it was like 1963 or something when they kind of broke onto the scene in the UK and then into the US. For 3.5 years before that, they used to play in pubs in Germany, like several shows a night. They would play 8 to 10 hours every single night. They got their 10,000 hours in 3.5 years. And so it's like, it's not hard to understand why, when they broke onto the scene, they were one of the best performing bands in history on stage. And it was like, you think of like Bach or Mozart or Beethoven, they have a handful of compositions that like were real masterpieces, but people forget that each of them produced 1,200 different compositions.
And I think when I hear stories like that, I mean, that actually lights me up, right? Yeah. Because it's like, you love something so much that you're willing to put that kind of effort into it, right? Yeah. And so I think, that question about healthy hustle or kind of burnout hustle, it's like if someone's making you do something, or if you're making yourself do something that you not truly, like if you don't truly love that thing, then it's like, whatever.
You're going to burn out.
Yeah.
Right?
You're going to burn out
because something that you don't truly love. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw an interview with Andre Agassi, the tennis guy, right? And it basically like his dad pushed him so hard to be this amazing tennis player, and he hated tennis.
That's hilarious.
He got to number one in the world, and basically just like, you kind of realized like, I hate this. Like I don't
like this sport.
I'm the best in the world and I hate it. And he fell all the way down to 120th or something like that.
Because he didn't want to do it to begin with.
Yeah. And he basically had to teach himself how to love it.
But so this is the interesting point that I think I want to talk about a little bit, because I think so many people, I think there's a lot of people, especially in the personal development space and coaching space, they hear these stories of Kobe Bryant or Andre Agassi, or, like the Whiplash story. Whiplash, was that the movie?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So they hear these stories and they're like, yeah, but that's not what I want. I want work-life balance.
Yeah.
And I would argue that most of the time, most of these people, the reason that they still have this trigger in their brain is because they compare work with work and life with life, and they're two different things. Right. And I think a lot of it, to your point, comes back to like learning to love the process. Like if Andre Agassi loved tennis, it's not work. If Andre Agassi does not love tennis, it's now work-life balance, and he has no work-life balance. So like with our clients, I always teach our clients, like, look, building your coaching business is like running a marathon. If you hate running, right, you can will yourself to, do the exercises and get in shape. And, first you run 5K, then 10K, then whatever. And you build it up, and eventually you go run the marathon. But in the process of running the marathon, right, while you're running the marathon, the whole time you're like, oh my God, this sucks. I hate it. Am I going to make it? Am I good enough? And in the entire process of running the marathon, you're just beating yourself up, and you hate the entire effing process. And then by the time you cross the marathon, you're like, oh my God, I made it. All right. Cool. And then you just go lie down and you Netflix and chill for like the next 6 months because you worked way too hard because you didn't get enough work-life balance. And so one of the things for our clients, I tell them all is like, I don't want you to run a marathon and hate running. I want you to learn how to love running. Because if you learn how to love running, then every day that you wake up and you're going and practicing running 5K or 10K or whatever, you're enjoying it. And then when you go run the marathon, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I get to do this thing. And then when you complete the marathon, you don't stop and then lie on the couch and watch TV for the next 6 months. You might run through the finish line and keep running because you actually love running. To your point, it's a combination of like, okay, find something that is purposeful, that is aligned with you, that is mission oriented, that you love and you're driven by. And then find ways to really fall in love with the process. And if you can find ways to really fall in love with the process, like you're not, like people always ask me, they're like, Zander, when are you going to be done building your coaching business? I'm like, why would I be done? Like, this is so fun, right? It's like, but aren't you going to achieve, when is enough enough? I'm like, enough would be enough if I was just focused on the outcome. I'm not focused on the outcome at all. I'm focused on the process. I'm getting curious. How big can we get? How many people can we help? How many lives can we change? This is a blast to me. It's like, why would I stop at the finish line? There is no finish line to me.
Yeah. I think it's such a good point. I think one of the challenges is, how do you find that stuff? Like, you love running a coaching business, but there was a point in time where you were like, I think I want to do a coaching business.
Yeah.
And I know it's going to be hard. I don't know how it's going to be hard, and I know I'm going to have to do some work, and there's like this hump of like, the sort of learning curve that you have to get through to get to that point.
And I think initially you have to work on getting some true clarity around who you are and what really matters to you. Like, we take our clients through exercises on this to help them get clarity on like how they should be living and focusing their lives. If anybody's missing that clarity, like, we literally walk you through the exercises in my book, Shit You Don't Learn in College. So just go look it up on Amazon and buy it. But it's like the first third of the book is helping you get clarity on like what an aligned life would look like for you. Right? I think so many people are like, at some point when I'm 90 years old, I'm going to figure out my life's purpose. I'm like, no, like, we've actually proven that you can learn your life's purpose in about 3 days of like focused exercises and like getting through stuff. So it's like, you can figure out how you should be living the rest of your life. I've done these exercises every year for the last 8 years, and they don't change much. Like, I got it right the first time. Right. And so like, that's the first part, is get clarity in that direction. But then to your point, Jay, it's like, as I was building the business, it's like, okay, I had clarity in my direction and like where I wanted to be headed and the overall ideas of how I wanted to live my life. I wanted to build a coaching business because I wanted to, I really align with learning personally. Like one of the principles that drives my life is wanting to always learn and grow. Another principle is wanting to teach and share it with others. And another principle is deep connection, relational connection between other humans. I'm an empath, so I love connecting with other people on a very deep basis, not just transactional stuff. And, it kind of teed me up like, that makes sense. That's a coaching business, right? But then as I started to build a coaching business, there were a lot of things that I did not love, to your point, right? There was, I did not love marketing. I did not love sales. I did not love doing content, right? And like, we've had conversations around this. It's like, these were things that I did not love doing, but it wasn't that I couldn't love doing them, right? I just had beliefs around like, oh, well, sales is bad, right? I don't want to market. I just want to coach people. But when I was able to make these shifts around understanding like, well, what if my marketing could change more lives than my coaching ever could? Because it can get to more people. What if, and John Maxwell says, what if sales and coaching are the same thing? One's just before people pay you and one is after, right? The goal of coaching and sales is the exact same thing. It's to help empower and inspire and motivate people to take courageous action in the face of their fears, especially if you're selling something that people really need to transform and change their lives. So coaching and sales are the same thing. So I just had to shift my perspective. And all of a sudden I learned to love selling. I learned to love marketing. I learned to love doing content. And then you're just like, well, everything that I do in the business, I now love, but I had to create that love.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. And it just makes me kind of think like, yeah, anything new that you start is going to have these challenges.
You're going to have things that you don't want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And
did I ever tell you about what I told people when I first quit my job, that I was retiring?
No.
So when I first quit my 9 to 5, I told people that I was retiring, and everybody's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, how would you define retirement? And they're like, do whatever you want. And I was like, well, that's what I'm going to do. Right. I was retiring. I was never going to do something that I didn't want to do ever again. Right. That was when I quit my job. I was like, this is my retirement moment. I had a retirement party. There was like 30 friends that were there. It was hilarious. And I learned very quickly, I was probably retired for about 2 months. Just doing whatever it was that I wanted to do. And then after that, I learned very quickly, like if I wanted to get this coaching business up and running, I'm probably going to have to do some shit I don't want to do. But that's when it switched for me. I was like, okay, rather than just doing things that I want to do, could I focus on learning to love the things that I knew I needed to do? Like the whole like whistle while you work idea. Like what if, I know I'm going to have to work hard, but what if I could whistle and have fun while I was doing it?
Yeah, that's it. Like the parts that you need to do are going to take that work. And to get the outcome that you want, the result that you want, you are going to dig into that stuff. And if you dig into it well enough, then you will learn to love it. And
then you become the person that loves running, and running a marathon is not difficult anymore. You just kind of keep going.
Yeah, I haven't gotten there yet.
Me neither. I hate running.
Yeah, I ran a marathon and I had both of those moments. Halfway through the marathon, I was like, look at this. This is awesome. I love this. And then 20 miles in, I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I hate this.
Why did I do this? This is a terrible idea.
So
have you ever burnt out in business? Like, have you ever gotten to that point where you felt burnt out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've gotten to the point where I was doing so much of the things that I wasn't really aligned with that I just like, this isn't for me anymore. So
it a lot of it just comes back to alignment.
Yeah, that's really it. It's just like, I mean, a moment that I can think of early on in my business is, and it's really, for me, it's like frustration and it's like, this is stupid. But a moment I can think of really early on in my business is I used to mop the floors because, again, physical location. I'm an old man.
Yeah.
And I used to mop the floors every Sunday because the place needed to be clean, and that was part of what we were trying to do with the gym. And I would basically go in at like, whatever, 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. I'd do a workout and then I would mop the floors. Right. Yeah. And it was like, my daughter was like 2 at the time. And I was like, this is stupid. like if this is what my job is going to be, if this is what my life is going to be, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I actually, at that point, took a step back and said, I could do more of what I wanted to do if I spent less time doing the things that I don't want to do. And that's when I hired a cleaner and a bunch of
you
other
hire
stuff like
someone
that.
and yeah.
But it took me kind of getting to that point where I was like I can't do this every week. Like I can't even do this for one more minute.
But what about the people that like can't afford to hire a cleaner? Like, do you think there's always going to be a time in the beginning of the business where it's like, yeah, you are going to have to do a lot of the shit that you don't want to do, and then you get to the point where you can like farm it out? Or what do you think there?
I mean, I think, yeah, when I started, I had a full-time job, and then I did the business on the side. And the business started earning enough money eventually, while working mornings and evenings and, doing all of the stuff, eventually earned enough money so I could quit the full-time job, right? Yeah. Once I got to that point, I was still doing everything. And it was like, okay, if I want to move to the next level, then I'm going to have to earn more money, right? And so for me, it was like, if I had stopped at that point and not pursued the sort of next level, then I definitely would have burnt out.
You would have burnt out, because at that point, you've basically created yourself a job where you're spending 5 hours a day mopping the floors.
Yeah. And so it's just like, I think it's kind of a pursuit. It's like,
it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, I heard this from Netflix CEO, was it Reed Hastings? I don't remember his name. Netflix CEO. He was like, hard work is overrated. And this is the guy who runs Netflix, right? And he's like, hard work is overrated. At the beginning, you got to work hard because you have no idea what you're doing, right? Yeah. You have to do everything. But unless you are kind of evaluating, asking questions, and sort of growing, then you're just going to work hard for the rest of your life. Once you start to kind of figure the things out, then you kind of move to the level where actually, as you get older, you're spending less time doing those sort of manual labor stuff and producing sort of work, and more time kind of focusing on ideas and growing the business and things like that. And if it doesn't happen like that, then like you said, you're working your way into a job.
But what's interesting here is like, so what he's saying is like, in the beginning, it does require hard work, right? And then you kind of get to the point where it's like, okay, if you just stayed at that level, you're going to burn out because you're doing a bunch of shit you don't want to do, which happens. I see that all the time. People kind of get stuck here and they don't pursue the next level, which is really the level that they want to be at, right? And they get kind of stuck here, and that causes a lot of problems. I see the opposite be true too, where like we're in the coaching space, and we have a lot of people that have been successful in their 9 to 5s, and they've gotten to the point where they are, directors or executives, and they are beyond the point of being the executor. And then when they quit and start the business again, they have this aversion to getting back into the hard work and the hustle.
Yeah, I don't want to answer emails or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like, oh, I shouldn't be the one posting my content or writing these captions or having these conversations or doing sales calls. I shouldn't be I'm an executive. Do you know who I am? Do you even know, Jay? Right? Like, well, why don't you leave that ego back at Facebook, which you left because you weren't aligned, and you are going to have to get back into the hustle because you're in an entirely new field and you have to learn again from the ground up like you were an apprentice. And if you're not willing to do that, like I see people that all the time try and skip step 1 and jump straight to 7.
Yeah, that is a fast path to burnout. I see that a lot. Yeah. It's, when I was running the gyms, it's the same thing. Like the people that had the hardest time were the people that used to be in shape. And then they come back and they're like trying to get back in shape. And they're like, well, I used to be able to, run.
It's the expectations that they have.
Yeah. It's like, I used to be able to run a 6-minute mile. Right. Yeah.
Oh man, I didn't think about it. It's like, it's literally, it's debilitating when you're like, well, I used to make $300,000 a year and I didn't have to execute on anything. Yeah. And now you're telling me that I got to go be the one to have all these conversations and do all this stuff, this ground level work. It's like, yeah, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you're starting something, then by definition, you're starting from scratch. I mean, you have some skills, but there is some stuff that you don't know. And that's why you're starting this new thing.
A lot of stuff you don't know, right? I think that was probably one of the biggest things for me when I quit, is like I accepted very quickly that even though I was successful in corporate, like not only did I didn't know what I didn't know, but I also knew that I was a brand new beginner in the space. Yeah. And I learned even quicker within the first 6 months that there were a ton of skills that I learned in corporate that were actually detrimental to me as an entrepreneur. And so it was almost like, not only was I starting at step one, but there were some things that actually had me take about 4 or 5 steps back. It was like I was at -4. Yeah. Just because I had to like unlearn some really unhelpful shit.
How did you bridge that gap?
I worked hard. But that's what it was, right? So like I knew kind of to come back to, first full circle, right? Like if you want to have more, you must become more. Right? So by definition, Jim Rohn is saying you're not good enough. Like, I know this is like blasphemy in the personal development space. They're like, oh, Zander, but Brene Brown said I'm good enough. I don't care what Brene Brown said. You're not. If you were good enough, you would already be there. And so like Jim Rohn says, to have more, you must become more. So we must grow. We must become better. So the first step in becoming better is accepting where you are.
Yeah. Accept that you suck.
Accept that you suck. Yeah. And for me, I think I still remember, I remember the moment that I had the realization that I sucked a lot more than I thought I did. I'd hired my first marketing mentor, and he was teaching me copywriting, and this was back in the day of landing pages and opt-ins being important and that sort of stuff. And he was teaching me how to put together a landing page and an opt-in lead magnet, that sort of stuff. And I remember putting together my first one, and in my mind, I'm thinking, I know I'm a brand newbie at this, but like I'm a pretty smart guy. So like, I'm probably not at like an 8 or a 9 or a 10 out of 10, but like, I'm for sure like a 4 or 5. And I remember sharing it with him, and he just goes, Zander, this really sucks. Like, we got to scrap this whole thing and start over. And I'm like, well, that hurt. And I was like, well, okay. I asked him this question. I was like, well, okay. But like on like a scale of like 1 to 10, like how much, like 1 being it's like completely trash, 5 being like, yeah, it sucks, but we just got to redo it. And 10 being like, it's good. Like, where would you rank? He's like, dude, this is like a -3. And I was gutted. But to your point, my expectation of where I was expecting to be. And I remember being so pissed at him for like 2 straight days. Like I remember like having trouble sleeping and like for 2 straight days. And then at one point I just accepted. Like he's a lot better at this. He's been in the industry for 15 years. Like what if I am just really at a -3? And my whole nervous system calmed down and was like, okay, well, you're at a -3. Doesn't mean you can't get to a 10. It just means you thought you were at a 4 and you're at a -3. It just means you have 7 extra steps to go through to get there. Yeah. So just get to work. Start, putting in the energy, practicing, put in the effort, and focus on growth. Like rather than focusing on where you are now, focus on how can I be better tomorrow? And as I really pursued that, I was a part of a mastermind at the time, and I'd say everybody else was at like a 7 or an 8 out of 10. And I was at a -3, right? Everybody in that mastermind had like, 10K, 15K, 20K per month businesses. And I had nothing, and I wasn't even in the field, right? And I came in there, and within 4 or 5 months, I had surpassed everybody in the mastermind. Right? Like 5 or 6 months in, I had a 30 or 40K per month coaching business, and everybody else was still at like 10 to 15. And they were like, what the hell just happened? Yeah. And it was simply because I had accepted that I sucked. And instead of like just accepting where I was, I just focused on getting better, and I put the energy and the work in. Right. Yeah. And to your point, like this was a season for me where I needed to swing out of balance and really focus on just getting better constantly. Like I needed to put Kobe level effort into my practice of becoming better at marketing and sales and offers and connecting with people and everything I needed to do to build the business.
Yeah. This is a great example. And I know we kind of went in this rabbit hole of like how to learn skills, but basically it just really comes down to your framing. It's like, oh, you started doing work and realized like, oh, you're much worse at this than you think. Yeah. And you had to kind of take that hit to the ego. Yeah. To be able to figure out like, no, I'm starting here, not here. Versus like, if you held on to this idea, like, no, he's wrong, I'm going to go work with someone else. then
Which a lot of people do, right? A lot of people just hold on to that egoic attachment to the expectation of where no, Zander, there's got to be a way where I don't have to do the grunt work in the beginning of building my coaching business. And then they'll go spend $10,000 on this coach, $20,000 on building a website, $10,000 on doing this thing, and not get anywhere because they're just trying to avoid doing the one thing that'll actually grow the business.
Yeah, that's right. And it's like there is a level of work, there's a level of push that you're going to need to put at the beginning, and some of that push is just going to reveal your inadequacies.
Like one of the questions, I always get from really intelligent and successful people, on our group calls and things like that is like, Zander, like, how do I become more efficient at this? Like, I want to make sure that I'm doing the right things and I want to become more efficient at this so I can spend less time and get faster results. And my response every single time is like, I always ask them like, you've heard of the 80-20 rule, haven't you? And everyone's like, yeah, I want to put the energy into the 20% that produces 80% of the results. And I always tell them, I was like, that's for people who know how to be effective. You can't find efficiency until you've already learned how to be effective. And the only way to learn how to be effective is to be incredibly inefficient.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to go put in an inefficient amount of energy and work to really learn the best way. Like, how do you implement the 80-20 rule? You have to go implement the 100% to find the 20%. If you're just like, nope, I just only want to do the 20%, you never even find the 20% because you keep picking the wrong 20%. So it's like you have to go do it all to learn what is the 20% to actually go put more energy into.
See, yeah, you basically got to go do everything.
Yeah. In the beginning, you got to go do it.
Yeah, you got to go do everything. So really burnout, work-life balance, all of this is just a state of mind.
It's a state of mind. It's most of it, in my opinion, results from not being aligned with the work that you're doing. Or like you just mentioned, mismanaged expectations of what you're going to need to be doing. I think when you let those two things go, like obviously do something in your life, whether it's a coaching business or software or whatever as an entrepreneur, or even in a 9-to-5. Like there's people that I know that are in 9-to-5s that are perfectly aligned with who they are. And it's like that person should never become an entrepreneur. Like do that thing, right? But like first find the thing that is aligned so that the lines between work and life kind of blur a little bit, right? And then just reset your ego and your expectation around what you're going to have to put energy and effort into, and then learn to love the things that you know you're going to have to do more of.
So what's a question that people can ask themselves if they feel like they might be out of balance, or they're, to ask themselves if they might be in balance? Honestly,
the question that changed my life was, what would you do if you couldn't fail? Right. So that was the one that got me to quit my 9-to-5 job. It was like, well, what would you do if you couldn't fail? And it was a very clear answer to me. I would figure out how to mentor and teach people full time. I didn't even know what a life coach was at that point, but that was the answer for me. Like, what would you do if you couldn't fail? What would you do if money wasn't a thing? Like, what would you do? And that'll kind of teach you what you're really aligned with. What was the other part of that question?
Yeah, no, I think it's like, the question was really like, what question can people ask themselves to know if they're in balance or if they're in burnout? Yeah, a question that comes up for me is like, okay, if I had all the money in the world and I didn't have to worry about money or time, what would I be doing?
Yeah.
Right? It's a similar version of that. But also, one I've been asking myself more recently is like, will I be doing this 10 years from now? Do I want to be doing this 10 years from now? Because if the answer is yes, then it doesn't matter where I start.
Exactly, right? It's a much more simple and practical question, right? Like, do I want to be doing this 10 years from now? And like, just ask yourself that about like wherever you're at. Like, do I want to be doing this exact same thing 10 years from now? And my answer would be like 100%. Yeah. Like everybody always asks me, like, would you ever sell high impact coaching? I'm like, well, if I sold it, I would start another business that would be higher impact coaching. It's like, I love what I'm doing. This is very aligned with who I am and what is important to me. And so it's like, if I sold my business, I'd relaunch another of the exact same businesses. It just doesn't make sense.
It's funny. I actually tried to buy another gym at one point, and I was like, is this like, the guy was like struggling, whatever. And I was like, well, I could buy this gym and I'd try to work out the price. And I asked him, would you be willing to sell the gym? And he goes, well, what would I do with myself? And that was like, that ended all of the discussions.
That is such a good answer.
that was like 7 years ago. He's still running that gym.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. So my last question here, someone says, I want to grow, but I don't want to sacrifice my life. How do you respond?
Yes. Sorry, stupid questions require stupid answers. There's I can't remember who told me this, but like the purpose of life is both, right? So you have people that are incredibly present and in the moment. Like they're present with their life. They have that presence, but they're unfulfilled. And then you have people that accomplish things. They grow, they achieve, they accomplish, but they don't have presence. It's the two-sided coin. It's for every single person. You really want to find this life where you can have both, right? You can be both present with your current life, right? And you can achieve great things and be fulfilled, achieve and grow and move and be fulfilled, right? But if you just have one, you'll always feel a little bit of off balance. I think, for so many people, that's kind of what it is, right? And so the question really comes back to to me, it always just kind of comes back to learn to whistle while you work, right? Learn to love the thing that you're doing while you're doing it so that in the growth process, you're not sacrificing anything.
That's so good. That's so good. I think that's the best way to end this work-life balance. If someone wants to work with us, there is a link below to apply to work with us. We will help you find balance or help you forget about the idea of balance.
maybe swing you a little bit out of balance because you need it.
and get to do what you love. So thanks a lot, Zander. This has been great.
Yeah, thanks, man.